Pauline speaking. The Quest to the Magic Algae. Once upon a time, there was a great kingdom in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Atlantid was a beautiful and welcoming underwater paradise for all sea creatures that had earned their place in the mythical city. Colorful coral reefs, seashells, and spacious underwater caves, Atlantid had them all for its inhabitants to live in, and everybody contributed to the well-being of their beloved city. Looking over the kingdom stood an enormous and elegant castle that housed the royal family. The king, Tritus, was a noble and admired merman that had served his kingdom with prosperity and courage for many years. His wife, Sunita, had sadly passed away many years ago, leaving him to raise their precious twins, Princess Coralia and Prince Reef, all by himself. Coralia was sweet, generous, and caring towards every inhabitant of Atlantide. She made sure every sea creature was welcomed, felt at home, and took more and more responsibility in the kingdom, preparing to, one day, take over for her father as Queen of Atlantide. On the other hand, her brother, Prince Reef, was rude and selfish. He was jealous of the princess who had all the attention and who was next in line as heir. Because of that, he didn't talk to anyone in the castle and only took care of himself.
Justine speaking. One morning, King Tritus felt greatly ill and needed immediate treatment. The only possible cure was miles away in the West Pacific. This territory was ruled by sharks whose leader was the notorious Joshua, oldest and most dangerous creature of the area, who constantly waited for mer people to take one wrong turn and fall into his destructive jaws. As the people of Atlanta hesitated to take on the quest and risk their lives for their king, Tritus, young Coralia had already packed her clam suitcase and was on her way to her brother's cave. "Reef," she hollered, "we must leave now if we want to make it back in time." "What do you mean?" he asked. "Haven't you heard?" she responded. "Father missed the morning patrol around the kingdom, and when we went to check on him, he was lying unconscious in his cave. No one has been able to wake him up since. Doctors say the only thing that could help him was this rare algae from the shark's den." "Do you mean magic spirulina?" "Oh my Poseidon," he exclaimed. "Father's condition must be serious considering the power of this herb. Count me in." Together, they headed out the kingdom and began their journey to the other side of the ocean.
Fanny speaking. A few miles past the edge of the kingdom, the twins came across Myrtle the turtle, who seemed to have difficulty blowing air bubbles in the water. As they got closer, Coralia noticed that Myrtle had a straw stuck in one of her nostrils and desperately wanted to help. However, as selfish as he was, Reef refused to help and decided to simply sit back and relax. After countless tries, Coralia was finally able to remove the straw and Myrtle peacefully swam away, letting the twins continue their journey. Proud of her good deed, Coralia joyfully followed her brother's lead to the den. However, the young mermaid kept complaining about hearing dolphin cries in the distance. She couldn't ignore the panic in the echolocative sounds and wanted to help. Coralia trusted her fluent dolphin speaking abilities to find the animal, and eventually they got to a big fishing boat. That is when they spotted Sheldon the dolphin, who had gotten stuck in a fishnet while surfing the waves. He had lost track of his pod and was in complete distress. Once again, greedy Reef was reluctant about helping poor Sheldon. He believed they couldn't afford to take the time to save one insignificant dolphin. To Coralia, it was unthinkable to leave the dolphin. Her stubbornness eventually convinced the prince to help. Once the fishnet was cut, they watched Sheldon the dolphin swim off cheerfully. As Reef started to get annoyed by all the unexpected incidents, which he thought were only a waste of time, something sudden came along their odyssey again. This time, they discerned a poor animal stuck under an oil barrel, which is very common in this portion of the ocean, an area where humans drop all their garbage. As they got closer, they saw that it was a stingray who introduced herself as Sharpay the stingray. Like always, Reef was unbothered by it, so Corellia had to help Sharpay all by herself. After a lot of pushing, struggling, and lifting, Sharpay was finally free again. She thanked the princess, and before leaving, she promised she would repay her kindness someday. The twins subsequently got back on their path to the shark's den. Exhausted, out of breath, and famished, the twins finally reached Joshua's den. As an eerie wave of darkness hit them, chills went down their spines, but they had no choice. They had to enter the cave to collect the algae and save their beloved father. Reef entered the dark tunnel without hesitation, and his sister, terrified, caught up with him shortly after. As they made their way into the den, Corellia and Reef came across fish carcasses and knew they could run into trouble, but were also very close to their goal.
Justine speaking. The bright fluorescent light of the magical plants led the twins to the algae, but just as they swam down to collect their father's remedy, a giant shadow covered them. Surprised and afraid, Corellia and Reef found themselves stuck under none other than Joshua. Enraged, he chased and trapped them in a narrow corner of his den. As Reef started to hyperventilate due to the stress, Corellia had an ingenious idea. She quickly took a big seashell from her bundle and blew in it, hoping someone would hear and come help them. As the loud yet melodious sound emerged from the seashell's horn, pods, schools, bales, and fevers from around the ocean, each led by the animals they had helped along the way, started to gather near the twins and look ready to defend them. As soon as the twins recognized Myrtle the turtle, Sheldon the dolphin, and Sharpay the stingray, they knew that Joshua the dark shark wouldn't stand a chance against them.
Juliet speaking. Without a second of hesitation, all the sea animals charged toward the same target. Poor Joshua got his tail stung by the stingrays, his fin bit by the turtles, and his overall body roughed up by the pod of angry dolphins and their strong flapping tails. After what seemed like an eternity, the completely exhausted shark swam off crying and brooding on his defeat. For a while, the silence filled the ocean, and nothing could be heard but the sound of peace and vanquishment. After taking a big breath, Corellia and Reef jumped of joy and hugged all their friends to celebrate their victory. As the last ray of sunshine pierced through the water, the triumphant group said their goodbyes and went their separate ways, dispersing into the vast ocean. Afterwards, Corellia and Reef finally picked up the magic spirulina algae, placed it in their clam suitcases, and headed back to the castle. Corellia and Reef rushed to the kingdom, hoping they weren't too late to heal their father. Thankfully, they arrived on time and King Tritus got the medication. Phew! A long and happy life now waited for him, and he could, once again, wisely rule Atlantad, forever grateful of his kids' altruism. Furthermore, after that crazy adventure, Reef realized that being helpful to others can also benefit you. He promised his sister Corellia that from now on he would be nicer to those who surrounded him. The end.